All right, digital arts, we are into section 8, and this next project, I'm all set up and ready to go for this next project for assignment 8A. And in this project, we're going to use some traced images to explore the principles of emphasis and dominance. So you should have read about that in the text in lesson 1, and now we're going to incorporate what we've learned into this project. So here we go. The first thing we need to do is to import a bitmap from our folder, and we should be looking in the student resources folder that you downloaded from the course overview, and we're going to look into section 8. You can use one of these images or you can use one of your own. They do suggest, if you're using your own image, that it's something pretty contrasting that you can easily trace, because that's what we're going to be doing today. So open up an image and slide it over so it's right in the middle of our page here. Next, we're going to set up our layers by going to our Layers menu and opening our Layers panel. I'll slide the screen over so you can see this here. We're going to select Layer 1 and call it Bitmap 1 and enter, and then add a new layer above current called Bitmap 2. Add another layer over current called Trace 1. Another layer called Trace 2, another layer called Color, more layers, one called Size, and last but not least, a layer called Shape. So all in all, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers and arranged in this order. Next, I'm going to grab my zoom tool and zoom in on my image here and get ready to trace. I'm going to trace using my Bezier tool, and I'm going to do this on the Trace 1 layer. So grab your Bezier tool, get on your Trace 1 layer, and start tracing. So now I have my book traced using my Bezier tool, and I went through and used my Nodes tool then to also make some adjustments to my line. So I have my image traced. Now I can apply different colors to the sections if I so choose, and I'll probably do that here. I grab my bucket tool and I can grab a color, oops, but I don't want to apply it to, everything. Let's grab this and just go in there. Alright, now I have my book traced and I have color filled in where I want it. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can grab everything. And I'm going to hold down Shift while I grab all of the trace lines in here. There we go. And up to Object, Group. So after we grouped our object, we're going to go ahead and go up to File, Save As, put this in your Section 8 folder. Let's make sure I'm not in Student Resources. Section 8. And we're going to call this Emphasis 8. Alright, now we're going to go over to our Layers panel and hide your bitmap. That way you don't, all you see then is the traced image. Then grab your traced image, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see my whole page. I'm going to drag this over to the top left corner. I'm going to hold Control and size this down just a little bit because I'm going to be making some clones. Get that positioned in your top left corner. And then with that image selected, we're going to go to Edit, down to Clone, and Create Tiled Clones. And in the dialog box, we're going to click the Symmetry tab and make sure that in the drop-down list that P1, Simple Translation, is selected. And you can decide for yourself how many rows and columns you want. I think I'm going to do 3 rows and 2 columns. Hit Create. You can see them duplicate in the background there. So go ahead and close this dialog box. Then using the Selection tool, click on the top left clone and press Delete to remove it. So like before, we have our top left clone selected and hit Delete. That way it deletes the copy and we have our master clone that we create all these other clones from. Now I'm going to drag and click and drag to select all of my images, and I want to size them down. Holding Control, I'm going to size them down so that they're all able to fit on the same page. I'm going to kind of just space them out a little bit more. All right, now I've got my clones spaced out, and if you want to, grab your original object and you can rotate it. We're still linked to all of our other clones, so it applies it to the rest of the clones. I'm just going to rotate my books just a little bit. And once you have them all set up the way you like, we're going to select all, go up to Edit, down to Clone, and say Unlink Clone. That way now it should be unlinked. If I can get a hold of this here. The rest of these clones should be unlinked from our original clone. So when I tilt that, it doesn't move it anymore. So now we're going to copy and paste our clones into other layers. So we want to click and drag to select all of the clones. And for some reason, my first book came ungrouped here. So I'm going to go back and group that together. Okay. Now we have everything selected. Hit Control-C to copy. And it says to go ahead and hide trace layer 1 and select the color layer. So we want to select the color layer and hit Paste in Place. Under Edit, Paste in Place. There we go. Now we want to hide the color layer and select the size layer. And again, go up to Edit, Paste in Place. And then we're going to hide the size layer and click on the shape layer. And same thing, Edit, Paste in Place. Then hide the shape layer. Okay, so we're going to go back to our color layer now and unhide that. And we're going to use what we learned about emphasis and the rule of thirds to edit one of our objects. So go ahead and choose one of the objects you want to edit, and then in the fill and stroke panel, we're going to edit that object's color. So after you apply a fill color to your object, it might look like all one big blah of a color, but we can change that by adjusting our alpha slider. And if we adjust that, you can see then the other colors kind of shine through, and it gives some different shading to our book there. So once you get the color the way you liked it, we can go back to our layers panel here. I have to minimize your fill and stroke. And go ahead and hide your color layer. And now we're going to go to the size layer and unhide that. And again, using the rule of thirds and emphasis that you learned, we're going to resize one of our objects to show emphasis. So I'm going to select this book here. I'm going to hold down Control and just make it a little larger. Emphasize the size. And then I'm going to arrange my other books so that they are not touching the larger book. Alright, so I made the one book larger, and then I rearranged my other books so that they're not touching it. And I also made my other books a little smaller just to make the other ones seem even larger, and so that I could get them arranged correctly without touching each other. So once you have your objects resized and adjusted the way you want, let's go ahead and hide that size layer. Now to emphasize the shape, we're actually going to import another bitmap. So go to your bitmap 2 layer, File, Import, go back to your Section 8 folder, and choose an image to emphasize the shape difference. I'm going to go ahead and choose this apple here. And now we're going to do the same thing we did before and get this image traced out using our Bezier tool. Alright, so I have my apple traced out here. Now I can go ahead and apply some color. Okay, now I've applied some color. I'm going to select everything, object, and group that together to be one object. And I actually should have been, you'll notice I was on my bitmap 2 layer, and I should have been on my trace 2 layer while I was tracing the object. So I'm actually going to hit Control-C to copy, go ahead and hide your bitmap, move to your trace layer, edit, paste in place, and that moves that to our traced layer. And now I'm going to Control-C that image again, hide my trace layer and go up to my shape layer and unhide that so I can see what I'm doing. Then using this rule of emphasis and the rule of thirds, you're going to place this new object in place of one of your books. And if it's touching any other books, make sure you move and arrange and resize those so that it's not. And you just want it kind of blending in, but the emphasis is on the fact that this is a different shape. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and hide that layer. Now we're going to export all of these different emphasis layers that we made. So go ahead and open your color layer first and go up to File, Export Bitmap. Make sure you like the looks of your project here. If you don't, go back and make any changes that you'd like. And then we're exporting the drawing. Browse, we want to find our section 8 folder, and this is going to be called color. Save, export. Next we're going to hide the color layer, open up our size layer, make sure it's selected and open, and make sure you like the way it looks. Then go up to File, Export, Drawing, and we're naming this one Size. Export. And last but not least, our shape layer. File, Export, Browse. This one's called Shape. And save and export. Okay, go ahead and close that dialog box. Now we should be able to go into our Digital Arts folder. Let's just double check to make sure everything exported correctly. Section 8, yes, we should have a color file, a shape file, and a size file. So double check those to make sure that they exported correctly. You should also have your Inkscape emphasis file, and you're going to zip all those together and submit that for assignment 8A.